In Florida, we have two very important molluscan shellfish that are either harvested and or cultured, and that's oysters and clams. Here in Cedar Key, we are a big producer of hard clams. Cedar Key is a small island community located on the west coast of Florida, about a couple hours north of Tampa, but it's in a very rural, pristine area referred to as the Big Bend. Clam farming came to Cedar Key about 25 years ago to assist the fishermen who were increasingly being put out of work by regulations. So these programs actually train fishermen how to farm clams and how to start new businesses. And in just a little over 2 decades, Cedar Key has become a major producer of farm-raised clams, probably producing 90% of the state's production from this small community. So here in sunny Florida, clam farming is year-round. So we're growing the same clam that supports very important fisheries and aquaculture industries all along the eastern seaboard. But because our water temperatures are warm almost year-round, we're able to farm year-round, as opposed to farmers, let's say up in Massachusetts, where they can't get out to their farm sites in the winter because of ice flows. They are very much seasonal, and it's because of this year-round production that we were able to enter the marketplace rather rapidly. Clam farms are located in coastal waters, submerged lands that are leased from the state of Florida. Our Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, they're the state agency that administers a leasing program for the state. Once a site is nominated, then it has to be surveyed and marked by the grower. Here on the west coast of Florida, since we have a lot of clam growers, we don't want to have a lot of individual farms scattered throughout our inshore waters, so they are blocked together where they meet all these criteria. And we refer to those grouped areas as aquaculture use zones. The size of the zone can vary, and here off Cedar Key, these zones are named after adjacent land and watermark. Today we went to visit Dog Island Aquaculture Use Zone, and it's comprised of multiple 2-acre parcels. So a grower there can lease one 2-acre parcel or have multiple 2-acre parcels depending on their business and their operation. Clam farming can be divided into 3 biological or cultural components. Seed is produced in the hatchery, then the small seed is continued to be reared in land-based nurseries till it reaches a field plantable size. Then the grow out to market and harvest, or to harvest and market, occurs in open water leases. Clam farming starts in the hatchery with the production of seed. Although the techniques and methods are pretty well worked out, they can be complex. Further, a hatchery requires an investment in coastal property, facilities, skilled labor. So many growers do not want to produce their own seed, they want to buy their seed. And fortunately, we have about 12 commercial hatcheries located throughout the state of Florida that produce anywhere from 250 to 350 million seed a year for our growers. So the process in the hatchery begins with spawning. So ripe adults, that we refer to as broodstock, they are laid out on a spawning table, and then the hatchery operator will manipulate the water temperature, changing it up and down maybe by 10 degrees Fahrenheit. That temperature change then induces or allows the clams to release their gametes. Gametes referring to eggs and sperm. They are males and there are females. So the gametes are released into the water column where fertilization occurs. So then you have a free-swimming, microscopic fertilized egg. So from there, the fertilized eggs are collected in a obviously very fine mesh screen and moved into large tanks that are filled with filtered, sterilized seawater. So they remain in those tanks from a period of anywhere from 10 to 14 days as they go through their various larval stages. They are free swimming at that point in time. Now, like most aquatic animals, clams also then go through a transformation. So they are going to settle out of the water column after about, again, that 10 to 14 day period. And then they're going to be more like they will be for the rest of their life because clams are benthic or bottom-dwelling animals. Even though at that point in time the clams have a true shell, they have a little foot, they are still very small and very vulnerable to adverse environmental conditions. So they remain in the hatchery in a different type of system because now they are not free swimming. So they go in a different type of tank system and are continued to be reared for another 30 to 60 days till they reach maybe 1 millimeter in size, and that's basically a pencil point. During this entire process, the larval culture and post-set stages, they are fed live microalgae that, again, the hatchery operator has to grow and feed in increasing numbers as the larvae and the post-set grow. So the intermediate stage in clam culture is the land-based nursery. So that's where the small seed that's produced in the hatchery is continued to be reared under less rigorous conditions until, again, they reach some minimum field plantable size. Here in Florida, our growers will actually take a 6 millimeter, that's about a 1/4 inch in size, seed out to their lease and plant. So to allow the clams to grow to that size, they are placed in 2 types of systems that are typically either shore-based or on an aquaculture dock. That's the wellers and then raceways. So the land-based nurseries are sited where there's adequate salt water, because clams like salt water, and then the water is pumped from that source over the clam seed and then back out. What the clams are doing are they're feeding now on naturally occurring small phytoplankton or marine microalgae, and then also the water is providing adequate oxygen to the growing seed. The nursery operator, their role in this is minimum. They clean the seed periodically from increased suspended solids. They may sieve them and so that they're sorting them by size during the growth process. And so there's much less skilled labor required, and the systems are such that they don't require a lot of input or capital costs. So many growers are attracted to incorporating a land-based nursery into their business plan if they have an adequate site. When they get a little bit larger, a lot of nursery operators want to transfer the seed to a different type of tank system, and it's just a long, narrow, rectangular trough, or again, tank, in which water is introduced in one end of the tank and then goes or races down to the other end, thus the name raceway. And again, this process, the land-based nursery process, can take anywhere from 30 to 90 days to reach that field plantable size. It really just depends on the water temperature, the amount of food that's in the water, and the time of year. Here in Florida, the minimum size seed that can be planted again out on the open water leases is about a 1/4 inch in shell length. It's still pretty small, but it does very well under our systems and conditions here. So the grower or farmer, we call them both, can either purchase his seed direct from a hatchery or a nursery, or as I mentioned earlier, they can actually nurse their own seed. But when the seed is ready to take out to the farm, they first have to bag it up. And the grow-out system that we use here in Florida predominantly is the soft bag system. It was actually developed for Florida conditions because unlike the coastal states, as you go further up the East Coast where they have vast intertidal zones, We have very limited tidal ranges here in the peninsula of Florida, so this system has to be handled and dealt with subtidally. The soft bag is made out of a polyester mesh material. It's sewn. There's a top and bottom, and it can be then planted on the bottom. Now, clams are benthic or bottom-dwelling animals, so you want to devise a system that contains them, protects them from predators, allows them to get buried into the bottom sediment, but also allows enough flow of the water through the bag or through the system to provide phytoplankton or food and oxygen. So the soft bag method, we use a two-step process. To contain the very small seed coming out of a nursery, you have to have a bag that obviously has very small holes or mesh openings. So those are typically 3 to 4 millimeters opening. And that small seed is stocked into that bag. Roughly, each grower has their own preferred number, but anywhere from 10 to maybe sometimes up to 20,000 seed per bag. These bags are typically 4 foot by 4 foot. Growers will typically go ahead and make belts. So belts are comprised of the individual clam bag. They are typically cable tied or tie wrapped together. They could be 7-bag belts or 5-bag belts. And then in addition, pipe, short pieces of PVC pipe are again attached at various points of the belt. And this is used in anchoring or securing the belts and bags to the bottom substrate when planted. In addition, because we have a lot of predators that like our clams, another layer of predator protection netting is placed over that belt. It can be galvanized chicken wire, or some farmers use plastic netting. It's again the preference of the farmer and sometimes the site conditions as well. Once the seed are placed inside the bag, then the spout of the bag, it can be tied or cable tied shut. As seed is placed into each bag and the number of bags per belt have all been planted, that belt will be rolled up. It depends on the tide. The grower may go immediately after that and plant the seed, or they can be held under cool, dry conditions till the next low tide, and that could be the next morning. But it's a very efficient system in that the belts and bags are already made up. When the seed comes in, they're placed inside the bags, they're rolled up, held, put on the boat, and then at low tide, they are literally rolled out on the sea floor and staked. When the grower feels that it has now reached a size of, let's say now, anywhere from a 1/2 inch or more in size, they will pull those nursery bags up, typically bring them back to a shore-based facility. They will then restock them at a lower density into the next mesh size bag. And those bags have an opening, again, it can vary, 9 millimeters to all the way up to 12 millimeters. That's about a 1/2 inch mesh opening. So your seed has to be large enough to be retained inside that bag. The clam farmer has then transferred his small seed into the grow-out bag. It's the same process. The belts of bags are then rolled back out onto the sea floor, staked down. Now they will remain there for, again, anywhere from 10 to 18 months, depending on the season planted, the size that the wholesaler wants to purchase, and just there are site variations as well as year-to-year variations in terms of growth. When it's time to harvest, the grower will, some growers will actually tie up their bags in advance of the harvest day, so that makes it more convenient to pull those bags up using either a winch from their boat or a roller rig on the back of the boat. These bags, at this point in time, if you've got a successful harvest, you're talking about harvesting anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 clams per bag that can weigh 60 to 80 pounds. So you need some sort of device to help to lift them up the sea bottom. They're also full of sand, so you've got to wash that sand out as you're pulling them up off the bottom. Once the clams are harvested, they're immediately delivered to the shellfish wholesaler. They can be delivered by boat or by truck. The first step in processing is to clean them. They've just come out of the bottom, so there's a lot of shell. Not every clam survives. And there's a lot of mud and sometimes other things that are in the bag that you want to clean out. So the clams are dumped from the bag onto a hopper in a cylindrical device or machine that's referred to as a tumbler. And there's water injected into the tumbler, and that helps in the cleaning process. So you end up with a basket full of clean clams. We have different colored plastic mesh bags that are used to contain the clams for harvest and for selling, and that distinguishes the grade size by the color. So the processing steps are fairly simple. It's cleaning, taking the clean clams to the grading room, sorting them out by size, packaging them in plastic colorful mesh bags. They can vary in count, depends on the market, but the end product is you have nice clean clams in a variety of sizes in colorful bags ready to go to market. Everybody wants to know, how long does it take to get to a market size? Well, again, we started in the hatchery, and that could take, let's say, 2 months. Then we have the Landbased Nursery. That could be another 2, 3 or more months. Then we have the field nursery, and then transfer to the grow-out bag to harvest. So in general, from spawn to harvest, it's anywhere from 18 to 24 months. So really almost 2 years to create that marketable size clam. Clams are a new seafood product really for Florida. So many folks are not aware of clams, so you just need to give it a try. They are very tasty, and in turn you're going to be supporting a very important Florida aquaculture industry.